The honourable member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is directed to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister explain to the House why the government settled on a target level of superannuation contributions of 12% of income by the end of the century? Is there any independent support for this level?
The Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the government's end-of-century superannuation contribution standard will provide a retirement incomes of the order of 40% of pre-retirement income. Now, this reflects community targets, and a compulsory level of savings of the order of about 12% would allow that sort of change, that sort of income level to be attained. But I was very interested in the evidence which was given in the Senate inquiry, which is now being undertaken by senators into the question of superannuation and compulsory superannuation, that the person appointed by the Leader of the Opposition to examine the Opposition's coalition superannuation policy, Associate Professor David Knox from Macquarie University, went before the Senate committee and gave the following evidence. He was asked, "Do you see potential problems arising for this country in paying its pensions if we do not pursue some sort of compulsory funding type arrangement?" Professor Knox: "I think given the ageing population, the demographic situation, if you like, then my answer is yes. Yes." He said, "We could argue that we do not need to do anything because we are going to have enormous increases in productivity and we're going to be able to fund the age pension in the year 2020. I do not buy that argument. I think that if you do have significant productivity and it all goes to the age pension, then the workers are going to be a bit upset about it. So I believe we do need to do something on a long-term basis, on a compulsory basis." And he went on to say, "I would add my comment that I think we need a compulsory core and an optional extra." And he was asked, "What is the core?" And he responded, I would put it in the range of an employer contribution of 7 to 12%. And he went on, he was asked further questions, and he went on to say, "So we should proceed with the superannuation guarantee levy." Question. He asked himself a question rhetorically. Should we proceed with the SGL? I suggest we should. And he went on to make some other points. In other words, here's the person appointed by the Liberal Party to examine their optional, tax-driven, tax-related superannuation scheme, opposing as they do the superannuation guarantee levy. Here's the person appointed saying he thinks the answer to a compulsory system is yes, we should have one, and the notion, he goes on to argue, we could argue we don't need to do anything because of productivity. Well, guess who's arguing that line? Those over there. I don't think, and he goes on, I don't buy that argument. In other words, he rejects the basis of your proposition, that is, your own inquirer objects the basis of your proposition that you ought to have a tax incentive-driven superannuation scheme without compulsion. And he goes on to make it dead clear that he regards a compulsory scheme as the only basic scheme, a core scheme, with optional top-ups, if you like, through the tax system. And not only that, but I noticed today in The Australian that Geoffrey Layman, who has supported the opposition's line of policy, including on the GST, said compulsory super is an urgent need, says Mr Layman. He says this.
Member for Mayo.
Well, I know you don't like it, so just listen and cop it.
Member for Lowe.
One of the political paradoxes in Australia is the federal coalition party's opposition to compulsory super, says Mr Layman. In the long term, compulsory super has the ability to reduce and almost remove dependence on the old age pension. This is a long-term project because workers in their 50s and even in their 40s on modest salaries simply cannot set aside enough of current income to achieve financial independence in their old age. To achieve this, these workers would have to start contributing a substantial percentage of their income to super in their 20s. Is this likely without compulsion? The answer is no. Now there's Mr Layman, who supported you on many of your policies and supports your general line of argument, rejecting you on compulsory super. There's the person you appointed, Professor Knox, telling the Senate committee that he believes we need compulsory superannuation. He supports the SGL and he supports core superannuation of the order of 7 to 12%. So where does it leave you? On the outside as usual. Wreckers, wreckers, as you always are, trying to wreck the one opportunity we've had in getting the workforce to agree to put 12% of their income away of savings to, at the important point, to go and wreck it. To go and wreck it. To go and wreck it. And to wreck it so that as we move on towards the change in the demographics of 2010 or 2020, when the retired age population of this country will be about twice what it is now, and the national budget won't be able to afford pension payments at levels which those people will require or the budget can sustain, then and now, when we can do something about it, who stands in the way of a decent, again, structural change for higher living standards in retirement and national savings? The federal coalition. As the point my colleague made a few moments ago, the Minister for Tourism and Resources. You can't name one structural change that you supported, one major microeconomic impediment you removed in the years you were in office. You can't name one. And this government's had to not only reform macroeconomic policy, but the whole of the microeconomy, and while it's doing it, it's lifting retirement incomes and making provision for Australian workers and adding to national savings, and like the narcs you are, you want to destroy that too. And you destroy it against the advice of the person you've had to inquire into it. You've had now the condemnation of the AMP Society, National Mutual, all of the people some of the people, National Mutual, who support you. You've had them condemn you. You've had everybody in the superannuation industry condemn you, and you're left on the basis you'll provide a few tax concessions, and if people take them up, well and good. If they don't, bad luck. Yes, bad luck for them, bad luck for the budget, bad luck for the nation. But you'll go your willful way. I mean, these are the issues that matter. These are the issues that are going to matter in the long run. You'll go your willful way to try and wreck the SGL and try and drag out a Senate process to hopefully the point where the thing doesn't pass, and try and wreck a national scheme which has taken from 1983 to 1992 to put in place. That's just the kind of mindless obstructionism and vandalism that you've always been famous for.
The honourable member for Bennelong.
Mr Speaker, I have a question for the Prime Minister about wreckers.